I don't think this is correct, but are we approval of floodplain ordinance? I don't think we're here to approve it today, but Dan Williams, come on up and tell us all about it, please. Huh? Oh, it's supposed to be? I didn't think it was. Go ahead.
We're not comfortable with where we're at right here this morning with what we've got done to the ordinance, so they're not going to have their first reading today. There's been many opinions and comments that came in with 9 out of 10 of them at the last hour, at the last minute, even though they had weeks to do it. So we've had little time with the holiday weekend to give due consideration to all these comments. I can tell you we are looking at the appeals process as it is set up in there and at the issues that you brought up. We are looking at everybody's comments seriously. Please, like I said, don't feel that we're trying to go one way or the other, because we're trying to be as fair as we can be. Our hands are somewhat tied in West Virginia versus some of the other states, is my understanding. The coal industry for years has controlled things in Charleston, and this gas is a spin-off of them, so the same entities from Consol, you name it, are the big players in this also. It's my understanding it was brought into committee this week in Charleston trying to cap any fees that the county could charge at $5,000. I don't believe it made it out of committee. That was one of the issues that we were trying to watch closely amongst this other stuff too. But we are confident that at the week, 2 weeks from now, at the next meeting, that we can have the first reading. If we desire to have two, and I think it was kind of consensus to have 2 readings so that they're we'll be ready for the next meeting in 2 weeks. Questions?
I told you that I was going to say this. Years ago, the before the prices were raised on all the fees for the Marcellus drilling, the DEP took care of our floodplain for the drilling purposes. As money was introduced, the counties evidently said, we want our fair share of this. If you listen to a state Supreme Court case last fall, James Barton from the DEP said their first priority is to protect the waterways at the DEP office. That is their first priority that is given to them by the federal government. So I want to know if it's the DEP's first priority to protect the waterways and the floodplains from the drilling, then why is our county commission and you and this county having to go through all this stuff whenever it's supposed to be right at the DEP office?
Yeah.
Pursuant to the federal law, to qualify for the national flood insurance program, entities such as the county commission and according to the West Virginia Code, the county commissions are instructed to adopt floodplain ordinances. So,
But do we have to adopt the well part of it?
well, any construction in a floodplain would apply to the floodplain program. And in fact, FEMA recently came out with a technical bulletin as to oil and gas drilling in floodplains. So yeah, they want you, the county, to address that.
Are they going to give the counties any money to cover it?
Well,
And take care of the liabilities that result from it?
Well, when it's properly done, the county commission should be immune from liability. In fact, the ordinance itself speaks to that. It's when people don't follow the rules of their own ordinance that you run into issues. As to the funding, you would go through the permitting process. It all goes to just so you can get floodplain insurance. I mean, that's a requirement. You don't get floodplain insurance, national floodplain insurance, unless you have a floodplain ordinance that meets the minimum requirements of the national flood insurance program. And as for the DEP and their diligence with the waterways and all that, I can tell from experience that's the case, unfortunately.
Well, he testified to that in the Supreme
I
Court.
agree, this wasn't ours to fix. This got thrown in our lap, and we're trying to do the best we can with it. And again, like I said, things are kind of stacked against us in Charleston there. And I think, reading between the lines, the industry knows that they can control things by controlling a few people in Charleston. But if things get lobbied out into the counties and the county level and all, a lot tougher for them to deal with, you know. So their objective, it seems clear to me, is to try to strangle things at the state level as fast as they can and keep the county as little involved as possible.
May I ask a question of clarification?
Uh-huh.
Is when you said FEMA, many people use that euphemistically.
Yes.
And they mean the state, or they,
This
when
is
they're
the
really
feds.
referring to, that when you used it in reference to a bulletin, you mean federal?
Yes, the federal.
All right.
Yeah, and it is the Office of Homeland Security or whatever. We do kind of throw that term back and forth there loosely.
Thanks.
And of course, I just came across that bulletin at the last second. Report.
Carry on.
I thought on the county level, like if the state has, if the state or the federal government sets a platform, I was under the impression that the county and the state levels can strengthen or make more restrictive rules. So you're saying that, you know, the stuff that's going on in Charleston with the legislation or whatever with the money, that shouldn't even be an issue because on the county level, you can increase or do whatever. You can strengthen and make enforcement a lot stronger than what's on the state or the federal.
That's my understanding also. When I ask lawyers out, I get, well, yes and yes and no, sometimes and maybe, and so I don't believe it's quite that cut and dry. And I believe, from what I'm saying, that it looks like it's the industry's approach to quickly try to regulate our ability to do anything like that as quickly as possible at the state level.
So by foregoing another 2 weeks before the first reading, we're setting ourselves up in a trap where if industry passes or gets what they want, where's that going to leave the residents?
I don't think they can move that fast either. And, you know, my understanding is it did not make it out of the committee. And like I said, we're not comfortable with, we haven't got to adopt the changes that we would like today because, like I said, we got a lot of comments Monday night at midnight, Tuesday, and then we got in Good Friday and Easter weekend, and we didn't have time on night to thoroughly get things taken care of, and are comfortable where we're at today. So, you know, that's one of the reasons we want to ask
But
it.
I have another question. You say we, who is we?
Don and myself are the two that are working on the amendments to the draft.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Could
Dan.
could I make my comments now then, sir?
Yes, you can. Get right up here and talk to everybody, please.
Okay. Well, I'll reinforce a little bit what Mariana was saying. It was my impression that FEMA encourages, FEMA as in federal, encourages the counties to be more restrictive than their minimum standards. So I'm assuming the county has the right to go that way. I too appreciate all the hard work that Dan is doing, and it is not easy. It's very scary, the road we're going down. I noticed Mr. Robinson did make your comment when you were talking about the well injection meeting that's going to be taking place, and I assumed that you were referring to that particular meeting when you made a reference to the rights of the mineral owners, the royalty owners. You maybe were not. Maybe you were addressing it towards the whole floodplain ordinance. Not necessarily. But the floodplain ordinance priority is the protection of the water. It is not for the production of development. And so that has to always be uppermost in the county's mind. I appreciate that you have all of our comments and that you're going to take time and not rush it and go back through. I would ask if the county has the right to consider, in addition to whatever you address in the floodplain ordinance, do we have the right to address some of this protection through a zoning ordinance? can we take our floodplains and issue a zoning ordinance for the protection of the floodplains? That would give us more control to restrict what happens inside our floodplains. As David said, a lot of times a development here is going to affect people 5 or 10 or 15 miles down the road. So, no, they're not directly adjacent, but if the flooding occurs, they're definitely going to be affected. So is it possible that the county can work towards a zoning ordinance?
We'd have to address that with our attorney. I can't answer that, sorry. Go ahead.
May I respond?
You can.
Okay. It is possible to have a improvement location ordinance. Harrison County has an improvement location ordinance, which is in essence kind of a zoning tool. It's taken towards that direction. It has been talked about as to whether that's a positive or a negative. Like I said, it does happen across the board. I mean, we're not just talking about the oil and gas industry. For instance, if you want to separate your property into 2 pieces and all there, you want the one piece to be back away from the road, you've got to cut a 40-foot right of way through your piece of property to get back to the back piece. They consider that a subdivision. There's several things in there and all that the state code, if you adopt this, you're adopting the state code. And these things are mandated in the state code, okay? And so it is something that could be looked at. Several of the large counties in the state don't have it. I asked non-tenant about it in Ohio County, says no, Wheeling does not have it. Years ago, the landowners, the farmers and all there said, no, we don't want anything like this. And, I grew up hearing that zone was a 4-letter word. And that's still the mentality of many people. When you start telling them what they can and can't do with their land, it really becomes a contentious issue. And on a different note too there, Mariana, I think, was asked, who is looking at these things and these changes in the ordinance, and I said, no, myself. We're the first wave that looks at it. Then we go to the county commission, because it's ultimately their decision as to what they want in this and all. And say, hey guys, here are major issues that we're dealing with from the appeals process and different other things. What's your input on this? Because ultimately they're the ones that accept it.
Well, one comment I would make is just that where it comes to floodplains, the whole technology now, and as far as drillings, with these horizontal wells and the pooling agreements, all of a sudden we have no longer the little single well pad that takes up an acre. Now we have 13 station well pads that take up the size of 6 football fields, and they're permanent. And because they have to have all the tanks and they have to have the roads to get their trucks in and out, 6 football fields is an enormous acquisition out of the floodplain. And that is just so risky when it comes to our future. So that was my main purpose in wondering about a zoning ordinance or in a clause that prohibits multi-well pad in a floodplain, just because it is so invasive and detrimental to our future. So I appreciate that you're taking your time. May I ask when we come back for the 16th for the first reading, will there be any changes or comments allowed at that time, or is it open?
It's my understanding that it's open at that time.
So
We've had plenty of comment time here. Everybody's had an opportunity to give their comments. We're going to have our first reading.
So, and between now and the 16th, you will take no more comments? All right. That was my question.
Okay, thank you. And are we going to have a second reading, Mr. Wellman?
That's up to the commission there.
I think we agreed a long time ago that we'd have 2 readings, did we not?
Yeah, I think it was brought up whether we had to have a second reading or not. And I thought it was kind of an agreement that for transparency and all, since it seems to be the most common way to have 2 readings, we just go ahead and have the 2 readings. That's up to you guys.
Well, I think it still stands, we're gonna have 2 readings.
But I know you said there would be no additional comments submitted for revision. But at the second reading, would we be allowed to stand up and speak?
I don't see why, I don't see
At the
why,
first reading, I'm sorry, not the second.
I don't see why you can't come and speak. I have no objection to that being, you have any? Yeah. I don't see why you can't speak. You know, we're not trying to hide anything from anybody here.